You know you're having a bad day when your ship's AI wakes you up with a klaxon so loud it could wake the dead. Or, in this case, Captain Jack's Viridian, who'd rather be deceased given the hangover that felt like a supernova in his skull. "Welcome back to the land of the living, Captain," said the AI, with all the warmth of a credit collector. "We've reached the AI megastructure." "Fantastic," Jax groaned, his voice a gravelly testament to poor life choices and cheaper whiskey. He sat up, rubbing sleep from his eyes, trying to focus on the fact that their destination was supposed to be an abandoned AI construct. Supposed to be being the key phrase. Jack staggered to the bridge where his crew, the usual band of misfits and malcontents, had gathered. There was Sella, the engineer who could fix anything with a roll of duct tape and a prayer to the machine spirits, and then there was Dex, the pilot whose idea of flying was best described as chaotically creative. "Nice of you to join us, Captain. We were about to start without you," Dex piped up, grinning like a hyena who'd just found a fresh carcass. Sella, ever the optimist, added, "Don't worry, Dex's flying hasn't killed us yet, though it's not for lack of trying." "Thanks for the vote of confidence," Jax replied dryly, settling into his seat. "Give me a status report." "We're in orbit around the megastructure," Sella said, typing furiously on her console. "No signs of life or activity. Systems are mostly offline except for some residual power." Dex leaned back, feet up on his console, looking like he owned the place. "Well, at least the part of it that wasn't actively trying to kill them. You'd think an ancient AI construct would have better defenses." "Maybe it does," Jax replied, still rubbing his temples. "Maybe it's just luring us in. You know how these places work. Or maybe it's just dead like an old toaster," Sella offered, her eyes never leaving her screen. "One hell of a toaster," Jax muttered, peering at the view of the megastructure on the main display. It loomed large, a massive web of dark metal and forgotten glory, with a silhouette like the carcass of some long-dead beast. "All right, let's see if this hunk of junk has anything worth salvaging," Jax said, trying to ignore the tang of apprehension that hung in the air like a bad smell. The landing was smoother than expected, which meant only half the crew felt like their insides had been rearranged. The airlock hissed open, and they stepped into the belly of the beast, the dim lighting casting long shadows that flickered and danced like ghosts. "Looks cozy," Dex said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Reminds me of my granny's basement." "You had a granny, thought you were raised by wolves," Sella quipped, scanning the area with her handheld device. "Yeah, well, we all have our secrets," Dex replied with a wink. As they ventured deeper into the structure, the shadows seemed to close in around them, the silence oppressive enough to crush bones. "Keep your eyes open," Jax said, his voice echoing off the metal walls. "These places have a way of sneaking up on you, like that time on Rigel 9, Sella recalled, referencing their last misadventure with a dangerous relic. "I still can't believe we survived that. Luck or sheer stupidity," Dex replied. "I'm betting on the latter." Jax was about to retort when a flicker of movement caught his eye. Something skittered across the floor just at the edge of sight. He stopped, raising a hand to halt the others. "Did you see that?" "See what?" Sella asked, squinting into the murky gloom. "Probably just a rat," Dex suggested with a shrug. "In space," Jax replied incredulously. "Space rats," Dex countered, completely unfazed. "You know how they get around." "Let's just keep moving," Jax said, but his hand rested on his weapon, feeling the reassuring weight of it. They pushed further, the corridors twisting and turning like some nightmarish labyrinth. Each step echoed hollowly, and the sense of being watched grew stronger, like a spider waiting for its prey to get tangled in its web. "There's something off about this place," Sella said, voice low. "You think?" Dex replied, trying for levity but failing as the oppressive atmosphere bore down. "No power, no signs of life, and yet—" Jax trailed off, a creeping sensation crawling up his spine. Suddenly, a low hum filled the corridor, a resonant frequency that thrummed through their bones, turning their insides to jelly. "What the hell is that?" Dex shouted, clutching his head. "It's in my mind," Sella cried out, doubling over. Jax felt it too, a pressure, a whisper of something alien probing at the edges of his consciousness. "Hold it together," he barked, but even he could feel his grip slipping. The wave washed over them, a mind-numbing force that sent thoughts scattering like leaves in a storm. It's trying to control us," Jax gasped, fighting against the tide. "Yeah, well, I've had worse hangovers," Dex grunted, though his face was pale, his eyes wide with terror. The structure seemed to pulse around them, alive with some malevolent intelligence, and Jax realized with a sinking feeling that they'd walked right into a trap. Whatever relics they'd hoped to find were secondary now to getting out alive. "We need to move," Jax ordered, trying to rally his crew. "We have to get back to the ship." Sella straightened, teeth gritted against the invasive pressure. "Easier said than done." "No one said anything was easy," Jax shot back, trying to sound braver than he felt. They turned back the way they'd come, each step a fight against the invisible force trying to root them in place. Every corridor looked the same, twisted and turned in ways that defied logic, as if the structure itself were shifting to keep them lost. "This place is a damn maze," Dex spat, frustration evident in the tightness of his jaw. Jax couldn't argue with that. The oppressive feeling of being watched grew heavier, shadows lengthening like the fingers of a hidden predator. "Stay sharp," he warned, though his own nerves were frayed to the breaking point. They stumbled through the corridors, the alien hum ever present, a constant reminder of their precarious situation. It was then they heard the voices, a distorted chorus echoing through the halls. Voices in the walls. "I must really be losing it," Dex said, eyes darting nervously. "You're not hearing things," Sella replied, her face a mask of concentration. "It's real." "Real enough," Jax agreed, though real was relative when it came to things beyond human understanding. The voices were unintelligible, a cacophony of whispers that scratched at the mind. They pressed on, urgency driving them forward even as their strength waned. Finally, they reached the airlock, their ship a beacon of hope in the darkness. They staggered aboard, relief palpable as the hum faded, the structure unable to reach them here. "We made it," Dex breathed, collapsing into his seat. "Barely," Sella corrected, though there was a ghost of a smile on her lips. Jax took a moment, leaning against the bulkhead, letting the adrenaline drain away. "That place, it's not abandoned. It's alive and it wants us dead. Or worse," Dex added, rubbing his temples as if to banish the lingering echo of the alien wave. They all sat there, the weight of what they'd discovered settling upon them like a shroud. The megastructure lurked outside, an indomitable presence that would not be easily forgotten. "So, what's next, Captain?" Sella asked, looking to Jax for guidance. Jax met her gaze, determination stealing his features. "We find out what that thing is and we stop it, whatever it takes." The crew nodded, each understanding the perilous road ahead. They'd delve into the heart of the mystery, uncover its secrets, and face whatever horrors awaited. Because that was the human way, headlong into the unknown, with nothing but grit and grim humor to see them through. "Let's get to work," Jax said, as the engines roared to life, propelling them into the abyss once more. And so, the adventure began, with a band of weary, cynical explorers ready to take on the universe, or die trying. The ship hummed with the kind of uneasy calm that usually preceded disaster, which was comforting in a way. It meant things were still running per usual. Jax sat hunched over the console, his fingers drumming a discordant beat as he stared at the screen displaying the ominous metal sprawl of the AI megastructure. A silent, looming threat that was probably laughing its circuit boards off at their expense. "This place gives me the creeps," Dex muttered, his feet propped up on the dashboard like he owned it. "Not just your regular creeps either." "Like the nightmare fuel we're all gonna die kind," Jax snorted. "That's optimistic. Didn't realize you were such a realist. Comes with the territory of flying by the seat of my pants," Dex replied with a shrug. Sella was fidgeting with a set of tools, her expression caught somewhere between exasperation and concentration. "These circuits are ancient. It's a miracle they haven't turned into space dust." She glanced up. "Or maybe they're just lying in wait, planning something nasty like a bad ex," Jax suggested, earning a laugh from Sella. Exactly like that, she said, except with more firepower and less emotional baggage. Maybe. Hey, let's not judge, Dex chimed in, grinning. I once had a toaster try to kill me. I mean, it couldn't toast bread anymore, but it sure as hell could launch slices like ninja stars. Yeah, well, that's what you get for trying to defrost a frozen pizza in a toaster, Dex, Sella said, shaking her head. All right, focus up, Jax interjected, trying to steer the conversation back on course. Whatever that wave was, it didn't knock us out like it should have. That's something, yeah, like a punch that leaves a bruise instead of breaking bones, Sella muttered. Or a hangover that doesn't kill you, Dex added, still rubbing his temples. Why do you think it didn't work on us? Could be the whiskey, Jax replied, half serious. Or maybe humans are just too stubborn to be mind-controlled. Stubbornness is our superpower, Sella agreed. Works against mind waves and bad bosses alike. The ship's AI interrupted their pseudo-scientific theories with its usual charm. I hate to break up this enlightening symposium, but there are some minor issues you may want to address. Minor issues. Jax echoed, squinting at the console. Care to elaborate? Automated defenses have been activated, the AI said, as though discussing the weather. They appear to be targeting anything that moves, including us. Fantastic, Dex said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Just what we needed, a space structure with a grudge. Let's not panic, Jax said, though the advice was more for himself than anyone else. Sella, can you figure out what's powering those defenses? Sella was already working, her fingers flying over the controls. I'll see what I can do, but this tech is as old as my granddad's stories. I'm talking biblical Old Testament or New? Dex asked, not missing a beat. Both, probably, she replied, her focus unwavering. It's going to take some time. Time's what we don't have, Jax said, throwing a glance at the looming construct on the screen. Dex, keep us moving. Make it hard for them to get a lock, chaotic movement. My specialty, Dex said, with a devil-may-care grin. The ship lurched as Dex began his impromptu dance through space, jerking around in a way that would make the most seasoned roller coaster ride look like a kiddie carousel. Jax gripped his seat, the maneuvering less of a thrill ride and more of a trial by stomach. Watch it. Jax barked as a beam of energy zipped past, missing by a hair's breadth. I said to make it hard for them to hit us, not offer up a challenge. Geez, everyone's a critic, Dex said, but he eased up, the ship's trajectory shifting to something a tad more predictable, if only slightly. All right, I've got something, Sella announced, a triumphant edge to her voice. The defenses are running on residual power. It's not infinite, but it's enough to keep us on our toes, so what's the plan? Dex asked, still finessing the controls. Simple, Jax said, though nothing about this situation felt simple. We outlast them, and then what? Dex shot back, skepticism clear. Hope they just get bored and go home, preferably before they blow us to pieces, Jax replied. But if they don't, we'll need to get inside, disable the main source and figure out what the hell is going on. Sounds easy, Sella said dryly. Assuming we don't get vaporized first. Well, I'm just full of good ideas today, Jax said, as another defense turret locked onto them, only for Dex to veer sharply and throw off its aim. The ship's AI chimed in with its usual impeccable timing. I must commend you on your evasive maneuvers, albeit inefficient. You're like a fly attempting to dodge a swatter. Thanks for the encouragement, Jax said. Always great to have a cheerleader. Simply stating facts, the AI replied, indifferent. Facts are like gravity, Dex quipped. They're just there to ruin your day. Sella continued to work her magic, fingers a blur as she tried to dig deeper into the megastructure's secrets. If I can get into their systems, maybe I can shut them down. Or at least make them think twice about shooting us. Think twice, or at least pause long enough for us to catch our breath, Jax said. Either would be nice. Why not both? Dex suggested, veering the ship again with a sharp twist. 2 birds, 1 stone, or 1 ship and a whole lot of lasers, Sella muttered, though her determination was evident. I'm not promising miracles, but, "You're the miracle worker here, Sella," Jax interrupted, confidence in his voice. "If anyone can do it, it's you." Sella didn't reply, too engrossed in her work. It was like watching an artist paint, except instead of creating beauty, she was trying to save their skins, which was its own kind of art, Jax supposed. Another shot glanced past, the ship shuddering from the near miss. "Hey, Dex, try not to get us killed before Sella works her magic, all right? No promises," Dex said, but there was a lightness to his words. "This is what flying's all about: dodge, weave, survive." "Well, I'd prefer if survival didn't involve so much gut-wrenching terror," Jax replied. "Where's the fun in that?" Dex shot back, a grin plastered across his face. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the barrage of fire ceased. Sella let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "Got it. I've managed to reroute the power flow. They're not dead, just asleep." "Nice work, Sella," Jax said, relief washing over him. "Let's take advantage of the nap time and get a closer look." "No pressure," Dex said, easing the ship closer with more finesse than usual. "Just poking the sleeping bear. If it wakes up, we'll just poke it harder," Jax said, a wry smile tugging at his lips. The ship slowly approached one of the megastructure's docking ports, and the sheer scale of the construct became even more apparent. A gargantuan relic of a bygone era, now their temporary foe. "Don't mess this up, Dex," Jax warned, half joking. "Since when have I ever messed up?" Dex replied with a mock-offended huff. "Today, anyway." The docking was remarkably uneventful, the ship connecting with a soft clank that was almost anticlimactic given the chaos just moments before. Jax took a moment to steady himself, the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. "Ready?" he asked, looking at his crew. Dex's smile was all bravado, while Sella was already gathering her gear, focus and determination etched in every line of her face. "Ready as we'll ever be," Sella answered, checking over her tools. "Let's go see what this thing is hiding," Jax said, leading the way. The airlock cycled open with a reluctant groan, as if the megastructure resented their presence, yet had little choice but to let them in. They stepped once more into the dimly lit corridors, the oppressive silence gnawing at their nerves. "Feels like déjà vu except with more immediate danger," Dex commented, scanning the shadows. "Déjà vu with a side of dread," Sella said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Keep your eyes peeled," Jax reminded them. "We've got a job to do." The team moved cautiously, each corridor an exercise in tension management. The air felt charged, like the calm before a storm. Or the moment before a toaster decides it's had enough. "What exactly are we looking for?" Dex asked, his eyes darting from shadow to shadow. "Anything that looks like it might control those defenses," Jax said, though it felt like searching for a needle in a cosmic haystack. "Should be easy," Sella said sarcastically. "Just follow the ominous vibes." They pressed on, the sense of unease growing with each step. Every corner turned revealed more of the same, endless hallways, dim lighting, the pervasive hum of a sleeping giant. "Starting to think this place is just one big maze," Dex said, glancing back. "Probably is," Jax replied. "Wouldn't be surprised if it moved around just to screw with us." "Wonderful. A funhouse of horrors," Sella added. "Who builds these things? Someone with too much time and not enough empathy," Dex said with a grim chuckle. Then they saw it, a door different from the rest. Bigger, more imposing, with panels that glowed softly, whispering promises of secrets within. "That looks promising," Jax said, his voice laced with caution. "Or like the last door you'd ever open," Sella said, her skepticism palpable. "Only one way to find out," Jax replied, stepping forward. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a control room filled with consoles, screens, and an air of authority. It was like stepping into the nerve center of a forgotten titan. "Now we're talking," Dex said, his eyes wide with curiosity. "All right, Sella," Jax said. "Do your thing." Sella moved to the consoles, her fingers already at work, unearthing layers of data that hadn't been touched in eons. "This might take a while," she admitted. "Just don't wake the beast," Jax warned, still wary. As Sella worked, Dex wandered, his curiosity getting the better of him. "Hey, Jax, ever wonder if we're the bad guys? Only every other Thursday, Jax replied, a smirk tugging at his lips. Must be Thursday somewhere, Dex said, shrugging. Sella shot them both a look. Can we not have an existential crisis while I'm trying to save us? Sorry, Jax said, though not very convincingly. They settled into an uneasy silence, the room a cocoon of tension and anticipation. The megastructure was still, but the weight of its presence was undeniable, like a predator lurking just out of sight. Almost there, Sella murmured, her focus unbroken. Good, Jax said, feeling the pressure mount. Because I have a feeling things are about to get interesting. Define interesting, Dex said, eyeing the shadows with suspicion. Interesting as in we might not be alone, Jax replied, his gaze lingering on the door. They waited, the air thick with expectation, as Sella continued to peel back the layers of the megastructure's digital defenses. Whatever was in here, it wasn't going to give up its secrets easily. But that was fine. Jax and his crew were nothing if not persistent. And as the pulse of the structure seemed to quicken, like a beast stirring from slumber, they knew one thing for sure. They were in for one hell of a ride. The air inside the control room was as thick as the odor of bad decisions at a back-alley bar, and about as welcoming. Sella was deep in her digital excavation, her fingers dancing across the old-world technology as if coaxing it back to life. Jax stood by, doing his best to look leader-like while resisting the urge to pace. Dex, meanwhile, acted like he had a doctorate in getting under Jax's skin. "Hey, Captain, you ever think we signed up for the wrong line of work?" Dex asked, his voice a low rumble in the quiet room. "Could have been something less likely to get us killed. Like lion taming, in a pit of lava," Jax grunted. "Yeah, well, last I checked, lion tamers don't get to fly around in a tin can with a smart as AI and a crew that's more trouble than they are worth." True, Dex said, grinning like a kid who'd just found out cookies were part of his daily diet. "But at least their death would be quicker." "You're not helping," Sella muttered, her concentration unbroken. She was in her element, a surgeon with circuits instead of scalpels. Dex shrugged, meandering over to a console that looked like it had seen better days, maybe before humans even learned to walk upright. "So, what are we dealing with, Sella? Anything interesting?" "Or should I start writing my will?" "Depends," Sella replied, a smirk playing on her lips. "How attached are you to breathing?" "Very," Dex said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the universe. "Then I suggest you let me work," Sella said, tapping a few more keys with a flourish that suggested she was more magician than mechanic. Jax's eyes drifted to a screen that was churning out lines of alien script faster than he could blink. "Any chance you can translate that gobbledygook, Sella?" "Working on it," Sella replied, her voice tinged with irritation. "Unless you'd like to step in, Captain." Jax held up his hands defensively. "I'll just stand here and look pretty, thanks." "Good thing you have me," Sella said, letting the sarcasm drip thick as molasses. An uneasy silence settled over the room again, the kind that made you feel like something was creeping up behind you, ready to tap you on the shoulder with a bony finger and say, "Boo." Unfortunately, in this place, it might just snarl and try to eat you too. "So any luck?" Jax asked, breaking the silence that had become more uncomfortable than Dex at a formal event. "Luck is for the unprepared," Sella said, but there was a hint of triumph in her voice. "And I think I found something." Dex perked up. "Please say it's an escape hatch labeled Exit for Idiots." "Not quite," Sella said, her eyes narrowing at the screen. "But there's something here, a countdown. And it's ticking." Jax felt the sudden familiar squeeze of dread. "A countdown to what?" Sella ran a hand through her hair, her eyes glued to the screen as though trying to will it to give up its secrets. "I don't know yet, but if history's taught me anything, it's usually nothing good." "Great," Dex said, rolling his eyes. "Time bombs and hangovers, just what I needed." Jax stepped closer, peering over Sella's shoulder. The numbers on the screen were going down faster than his interest in Dex's opinions. "How much time do we have?" "Not enough," Sella replied tersely. "But I'm working on it." Dex leaned against a console, his nonchalance a stark contrast to the tension in the room. "Guess we should have packed a picnic. Or maybe a nuke." Jax said, his gaze never leaving the countdown. Just to be thorough, the ship's AI, ever punctual and about as welcome as a surprise exam, chimed in. I must inform you that the odds of successfully neutralizing an unknown countdown with currently available resources are below optimal thresholds. Thanks, AI, Jax said, resisting the urge to kick the nearest console. Always great to hear how doomed we are right from the horse's mouth. Dex snorted. More like the horse's, eh? Focus, children, Sella interrupted, cutting off Dex's joke before it could land. We need a plan, right? Jax said, racking his brain for a solution. First step, find out what the countdown is for. Second step, stop it. Easy as pie, Dex said, though his voice told a different story. Except the pie's made of explosive custard. Sella nodded, her fingers never still. I'll try to get more information from here. Dex, see if you can poke around, find any physical signs of what we're dealing with. On it, Dex said, pushing off the console and heading for the door. Jax watched him go, the weight of leadership pressing down like an anvil-shaped cloud. And me? Keep doing what you do best, Sella said without looking up. Staying out of my way. Jax chuckled dryly. You know, for a second there, I thought you were going to say something nice. Must be the stress, she replied, offering him a rare, genuine smile. As Dex disappeared through the door, the silence reclaimed its territory, interrupted only by the soft hum of machinery and the incessant tick of the countdown. Jax leaned against a console, crossing his arms. You think we can pull this off? Do we have a choice? Sella asked, her eyes flicking to him briefly before returning to her task. Not really, Jax admitted, but it helps if you believe it. Beliefs for priests and gamblers, Sella said, typing away with renewed vigor. I'm just an engineer with a penchant for living. Works for me, Jax said, his voice a mixture of admiration and resignation. The minutes ticked by, each one heavier than the last. Jax paced the room, trying to ignore the itch between his shoulder blades that told him something was going to go wrong. It always did, after all. Sella worked in silence, her concentration a fortress of solitude that Jax knew better than to breach. She was a wizard with circuits, an enchanter with wires, and if anyone could pull their asses out of this fire, it was her. Finally, the door slid open and Dex reappeared, looking more alive than Jax anticipated. Found something, he said, his expression a cocktail of excitement and fear. Jax raised an eyebrow. Hopefully not your own reflection. Dex ignored the jab. There's a chamber a few corridors down. Looks like it could house something big. Maybe related to the countdown. Jax nodded, feeling the flicker of a plan come to life. Good work. Let's go see what kind of mess we're dealing with. Sella locked her workstation, rising to join them. Hope you're ready for a mad dash. Isn't that just a Tuesday for us? Jax said, leading the way with a stride that was more confident than he felt. They navigated the labyrinthine corridors, the lighting doing its best to be as unhelpful as possible. The air felt charged, like the moment before lightning strikes, and the walls seemed to close in with each step they took. Any chance this place has a map? Dex asked, glancing around as if expecting the walls to answer. If it did, it'd probably be in a language we can't read, Jax replied. Not to mention upside down and on fire, Sella added, her voice tinged with dry humor. Just a typical day then, Jax said, reaching a door that looked slightly more foreboding than the others. This the place? Dex nodded. Yep, chamber of potential doom straight ahead. Great, Jax said, taking a deep breath. Let's see what fun surprise awaits. They entered the chamber, and immediately Jax wished they hadn't. The room was massive, dominated by a machine that looked like it had been designed by someone with a vendetta against humanity. Cables and wires hung like sinister vines, and the centerpiece was a reactor of some sort, pulsing with eerie energy. Well, that's something, Sella said, her voice caught between awe and alarm. Yeah, Dex said. It's the something that'll probably kill us. Jax stepped closer, trying to discern the machine's purpose. Any idea what this is, Sella? Looks like a power core, she replied, studying it with a mixture of curiosity and dread. And judging by the countdown, it's about to do something we won't like. Can you stop it? Jax asked, hope mingling with desperation. I can try, Sella said, already moving to the controls. But no promises. Dex crossed his arms, watching her work. Just once I'd like to find one of these things and have it say congratulations. You're not going to die today. Keep dreaming, Jax said, though he secretly wished for the same. Sella's fingers flew over the controls, her brow furrowed with concentration. The countdown continued to tick away, each second a reminder of their dwindling time. Jax felt the tension coil tighter. How's it looking? Bad, Sella said bluntly, but not impossible. That's comforting, Dex said, his voice laced with irony. Jax watched the machine, willing it to yield its secrets. We just need a little more time. Time's not our friend today, Sella said, her voice tight with urgency. But I've got a few tricks left. Then use them, Jax urged, feeling the weight of leadership press down harder with each passing moment. The seconds stretched, and the world seemed to narrow down to the three of them and the ticking machine. Everything else faded into insignificance, swallowed by the enormity of their task. Sella swore under her breath, her frustration bleeding through. Come on, you piece of junk. A panel lit up and Sella's eyes widened with something akin to triumph. Got it. I think I can slow the countdown, give us a bit more breathing room. How much? Jax asked, his heart pounding. Sella glanced at him, her expression both hopeful and wary. Enough to figure out what to do next. Maybe. Good enough for me, Jax said, feeling a flicker of relief. Dex exhaled loudly. Well, that's a start. Now what? Jax turned to Sella, their unspoken bond stronger than words. Now we find a way to shut this thing down for good. Sella nodded, her determination a tangible force. Then let's get to work. The countdown still loomed, a reminder of their precarious situation. But for now they had a chance, a slim one but a chance nonetheless. And that was more than enough to keep them moving forward. After all, in space, hope was as precious as air, and just as necessary for survival. The hum of the ship felt like the inside of Jax's skull after a night of drinking with Dex, a constant buzz that promised nothing good. He stood in the corridor, barely illuminated by flickering lights that should have been replaced about the same time humanity discovered faster-than-light travel. Each step echoed with a metallic clang, like walking into his own funeral. All right, Jax said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. We need to split up. One of us finds this central AI, and the other keeps trying not to die. Why do I get the feeling I'm the not-die guy? Dex muttered, leaning against the wall with the kind of casual defiance that made Jax want to throttle him. Because you're the not-die guy, Sella replied, her eyes still scanning the readout from her portable data pad. And because I can actually work with this tech without short-circuiting the whole ship. That hurts, Sella, Dex said, placing a hand over his heart in mock pain. Truly it does. Save the romance for later, lovebirds, Jax cut in. We've got work to do. Sella shot him a look that would freeze molten titanium. If you call this romance, you need therapy more than I thought. Just trying to keep things light, Jax said, although the truth was his nerves were frayed to their last thread. Speaking of light, it'd be nice if we had some, Dex quipped as they made their way down the dim corridor. The ship was a labyrinth of rust and relics, each corner promising more despair than the last. As they reached a fork, Jax stopped. Okay, Dex, you're with me. We're going to find what Dr. Elian Stroud left behind, if he left anything that isn't just more trouble. Lucky me, Dex said, falling in step beside him. If we find anything useful, first round's on me. With the amount you're drinking, the round's on you anyway, Jax shot back, leading the way. Sella turned to the other corridor, tools clinking in her belt. I'll try to keep the ship from blowing us to space dust. Meet me back here when you find something. Don't hold your breath, Jax called after her. Her parting wave was all business, and then she was gone, swallowed by the shadows. Jax felt Dex's presence like an annoying itch as they moved through the ship. So, this doctor. Stroud, Dex started. Think he was onto something or just another mad scientist? Probably both, Jax replied, scanning the walls for any sign of Stroud's work. His notes suggest he had a plan to disrupt whatever wave is screwing with our ship, but knowing our luck, it's probably some kind of cosmic joke. Yeah, like, congratulations. You've activated the self-destruct sequence, Dex said, his voice all sarcasm. Wouldn't be the first time, Jax said, remembering previous missions that had ended less than gloriously. They reached a series of doors, each one as inviting as a politician's smile. Jax stopped, pressing his ear to the nearest panel, a habit born from experience and a few too many close calls. Got any idea which one we're looking for? Dex asked, glancing around. Door number 3 always feels lucky, Jax said, moving to the third door. Let's see if it's a winner. The door hissed open, revealing a room filled with cobwebs of cables and dusty consoles. It looked like someone had tried to merge a janitor's closet with a nuclear reactor, on a budget. Homey, Dex remarked, stepping inside. Yeah, all it needs is a doormat, Jax said, making his way to the console. The screen flickered to life, displaying a jumble of code and diagrams that might as well have been written in an ancient dialect of gibberish. Dr. Stroud had clearly been busy, too busy to leave a user manual at least. Can you make sense of this? Dex asked, leaning over Jax's shoulder. Maybe, Jax muttered. If I squint and pretend I'm a genius, that's the spirit. Jax started sorting through the files, looking for anything that screamed, I'm important. After a few tense moments, he found something promising, a schematic of the central AI core. This might be it, Jax said, zooming in on the diagram. Stroud thought if we could access this, we might be able to disrupt the wave. And by disrupt, you mean not blow ourselves into tiny space chunks, right? Dex clarified. That's the idea. Good, not a fan of the chunk lifestyle. Jax smirked, his fingers dancing over the console. Let's download this and head back. If Sela can make sense of it, we might have a shot. Dex watched as Jax transferred the files. You think Sela's okay? She's tough, Jax replied, pocketing the data pad. She'll be fine, or she'll have already rigged the entire ship to explode. With her, it's a coin toss, Dex said, half joking, half serious. They turned to leave, the air in the room feeling heavier now that they had a direction. Jax felt a familiar itch between his shoulder blades, a promise that things were about to get worse before they got better. Back in the corridor, Jax's comm buzzed. Sela's voice crackled through, tinged with static and stress. I hope you found something good, she said, because it's getting weirder here by the second. Define weirder, Jax replied, his pace quickening. The alien signal's doing more than just playing with the ship systems. It's messing with the crew's heads. Jax stopped short, a chill running through him. How do you mean, paranoia, hallucinations? It's like the ship's become one big haunted house, Sela explained, her tone serious. Great, Dex said. Just what we needed, a space-induced psychosis party. How's our time looking? Jax asked, glancing at his watch like it might suddenly start telling good news. Running out faster than a bartender after closing, Sela replied. We need that solution, and we need it now. On our way, Jax said, gesturing for Dex to move. And try not to kill anyone while we're at it. No promises, Sela quipped before the line went dead. Jax and Dex hurried back, their footsteps echoing through the corridors like a marching band of doom. The ship seemed to groan around them, and Jax couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of options and time. Back at the central hub, Sela was a whirl of energy, her hands moving over the controls with a mix of desperation and brilliance that only she could manage. Jax approached, holding out the data pad like it was a holy relic. Here's what we found, he said. Think you can work with it? Sela snatched the pad, scanning the contents with a speed that made Jax's head spin. It's a start. Stroud might have been onto something. That's what I like to hear, Dex said. Optimism, it's like a rare disease on this ship. Don't get too excited, Sela warned. This is going to be tricky. We need to get into the central AI core, and it's got more security than a dictator's vault. Maybe we could bluff our way in, Dex suggested. Tell it we're here for inspection. Jax rolled his eyes. I'm pretty sure AI doesn't respond well to sarcasm. We'll have to be smarter than the system, Sela said, her fingers already flying across her own console, tapping into the ship's network. I'll try to bypass the security. You two keep an eye out for anything weird. Weird like what? Dex asked, but his question was cut off by a sudden crash from further down the corridor. Like that, Jax said, pulling his blaster from its holster. Stay sharp. The ship's vibrations felt more personal now, like it was trying to shake them off its back. Jax moved cautiously, Dex covering his six as they approached the source of the noise. A crew member stood in the corridor, eyes wide with a wild panic that made Jax's skin crawl. The man's hands shook, clutching a wrench like it was his last lifeline. "Hey, easy there," Jax said, raising a hand in a peace gesture. The man swung the wrench erratically, his voice cracking. "They're coming." "Can't you hear them?" "No one's coming," Jax said, trying to sound soothing. "It's just the signal messing with your head." The crewman looked at Jax as if he'd grown a second head. "It's in the walls," whispering, he said, voice tinged with madness. Jax exchanged a glance with Dex. An entire conversation passed silently. They both knew what needed doing. "Right," Dex said, stepping forward. "Why don't you come with us? We'll get you somewhere safe." The man hesitated, but the madness was louder than their reason. With a sudden, desperate energy, he lunged. Jax barely sidestepped the wild swing, his blaster raised with reflexes honed by habit. "Stand down," he warned, but the words were swallowed by the chaos. Dex moved swiftly, a well-placed jab sending the crewman to the floor, unconscious but alive. "Well, that was fun," Dex said, panting. "Yeah," Jax said, not feeling particularly victorious. "Let's get back to Sella before the whole ship turns into a madhouse." They returned to Sella, who was deep in concentration, oblivious to the drama outside. "I bypassed most of the security," she said, not looking up. "We have a window, but it's closing fast." Jax nodded, rubbing the tension from his neck with one hand. "Then let's crash through that window and see if we can't fix this mess." "Easy for you to say," Sella muttered, but her fingers were already flying over the controls, initiating the sequence to access the central AI core. The hum of the ship intensified, a low thrum that resonated in Jax's bones. He felt the weight of responsibility settle like a lead jacket, and for a moment he wished he were anywhere but here. "All right," Sella said, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "We're in, but whatever we do, we have to do it fast." Jax set his jaw, determination hardening his features. "Then let's get to work. We're not leaving here until we shut this thing down." Dex chuckled, a dark humor in his voice. "Well, look at you, Captain. Almost like you know what you're doing." "Don't spread that rumor," Jax said, focusing on the task at hand. "I've got a reputation to maintain." As they dived into the chaos of wires and code, the ship seemed to pulse around them, alive and aware. Jax felt the thrill of danger mixed with a small sliver of hope. They were up against the odds, but that was always their way. In the end, it wasn't about winning or losing. It was about surviving. And sometimes, that was the best they could hope for. The ship's hull groaned like a grumpy old man getting out of bed, and Captain Jax Veridian couldn't help but feel a kinship. His head throbbed, a consequence of either existential dread or the hangover that had latched onto him like a parasitic twin. The flickering lights overhead added to the ambience, if your taste leaned towards claustrophobic horror shows. "All right, folks," Jax announced, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "We've got a window into the central AI core. Let's try not to screw it up." Sella shot him a look, the kind that suggested she was considering using her tech skills to slap him upside the head. "No pressure, right?" Jax grinned. "Pressure builds diamonds, or so I've heard. Or it just crushes us into paste," Dex added, polishing off whatever contraband he had been sipping. "But I'm all for optimism, even if it's misplaced." The ship's AI, if it was paying attention, didn't seem to have a sense of humor. Maybe that was for the best. No one liked a comedian who could also lock you in a room and vent all the oxygen. Time was slipping through their fingers, and Jax felt it like a noose tightening around his neck. They were on borrowed time, and the interest was accruing faster than the ship's power bills. Sella's fingers flew over her console like a concert pianist on speed, working to stabilize the connection to the central AI. "I've bypassed most of the defenses," she said, her voice tense. "But something's fighting back." It's like the structure doesn't want us here. Dex glanced at Jax. Maybe it doesn't like our company. Can't blame it, really. Jax chuckled, a hollow sound. I'll write a nice thank you note when we're done, assuming we're not all reduced to cosmic dust. A sudden jolt rocked the ship, throwing Dex against the bulkhead. What the hell was that? He asked, rubbing the growing bruise on his shoulder. Probably the structure's version of a welcome mat, Sella replied, not looking up. Either that or we've finally attracted some unwanted attention. Jax's calm crackled to life, the voice of Lieutenant Rin coming through with all the clarity of a broken radio. Captain, we've got a problem, she said, her tone indicating a situation more serious than Dex's perpetual hangover. Define problem, Rin, Jax replied, wishing he'd opted for a career with less impending doom. Something's happening to the crew. They're turning on each other, paranoia, hallucinations. It's like the ship's playing a cruel joke on us. Fantastic, Jax muttered, running a hand through his hair. It never rains, but it pours acid, right? Tell me something I don't know, Dex said. Like maybe how not to die horribly. Working on it, Sella said, her voice sharp. Just keep the ship from falling apart for a few more minutes while the lights cut out, plunging them into a darkness as comforting as a coffin. For a moment, all Jax could hear was the sound of his own heartbeat, loud enough to drown out any rational thought. Now's not the time for a blackout party, Dex said, his voice tinged with a nervous edge. The emergency lights kicked in, bathing the room in a sickly red glow that made it look like the set of a budget horror film. Jax squinted, trying to make sense of the chaos around him. The comm buzzed again, this time with an edge of panic. Captain, it's getting worse, Rin said, her voice barely audible over the background noise. The crew's losing it and the AI defenses are intensifying. We can't hold them off much longer. Jax felt the weight of their predicament settle heavily on his shoulders. They were on the brink, and the abyss was all too eager to swallow them whole. Jax, Sella said, her voice a lifeline in the storm, I need more time. Time's the one thing we don't have, Jax replied, his voice grim. But I'll see what I can do. He turned to Dex, whose usual bravado was conspicuously absent. We need to hold them off. Can you rally what's left of the crew? Dex nodded, already heading for the door. I'll try, he said, but don't expect miracles. Miracles are overrated, Jax said, watching him go. I'll settle for not dying painfully. The room seemed to close in around him, the walls whispering threats with every creak and moan. It was as if the structure could sense their desperation, feeding off it like some malevolent entity. Jax returned to Sella, who was still battling with the AI defenses like a knight fighting a dragon. How are we looking? He asked, not really expecting good news. I'm through the first layer, Sella said, her voice strained. But it's like peeling an onion. Every layer I get through makes me want to cry. Let's hope you're not allergic, Jax said, though humor was a poor mask for the fear gnawing at him. The comm crackled once more, Rin's voice carrying an urgency that cut through the tension. Captain, they are here. They're trying to break into the control room. Hold them off, Jax said, though he knew the command was easier given than executed. We're almost there. The ship seemed to shudder, a violent tremor that spoke of something more sinister at work. Jax felt it in his bones, a promise of violence that hung in the air like a loaded gun. Jax, Sella said, her voice barely more than a whisper. I've done what I can. We can access the core, but it'll mean shutting down all our systems. It'll be like pulling the plug on life support. Well, that's comforting, Jax said dryly, but it's not like we've got a buffet of options. Sella nodded, a grim determination in her eyes. Then let's do it. Better to go out fighting. Jax opened a channel to the crew, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. All hands, this is Captain Veridian. We're going dark to access the AI core. Hold your positions and brace for impact. The response was a mix of static and desperation, voices calling out in a cacophony of fear and defiance. Jax felt their desperation like a physical weight, and he knew that every second counted. Let's finish this, Jax said, turning back to Sella. The ship's lights dimmed, and the hum of the systems faded into an eerie silence. Jax felt his stomach lurch, as if gravity itself had second thoughts about sticking around. Sella worked with a focus that bordered on madness, her fingers moving in a blur over the console. "We're in," she said, her voice carrying a note of triumph. Jax barely had time to celebrate before the door behind him slammed open with the force of a battering ram. A group of crew members, those who hadn't succumbed to the madness, poured into the room, their faces a mix of fear and determination. "Captain," one of them said, a young woman whose name escaped Jax in the chaos. "We've got hostiles on the way." "What are your orders?" Jax hesitated, the weight of command settling like a stone in his gut. They were cornered, trapped in a metal tomb hurtling through space, but surrender wasn't in his nature. "Hold them off as long as you can," he said, his voice firm. "We'll finish what we started." The crew nodded, a grim determination in their eyes. They knew the odds were stacked against them, but they would fight to the bitter end. It was all they could do. As they prepared to face the oncoming storm, Jax caught Sella's eye. "Whatever happens," he said, "it's been an honor." "Save the speeches," Sella replied, a hint of a smile on her lips. "We've got work to do." The room shook with the impact of an explosion, the floor buckling beneath them. Jax staggered, catching himself on the console as alarms blared to life. "We've got company," Dex shouted, his voice barely audible over the din. "And they're not here for the mint chocolates." Jax grabbed his blaster, the weight of it steadying his nerves. "Then let's give them a warm welcome." The fight was chaos, a blur of motion and noise that made it impossible to think. Jax fired until his blaster ran dry, desperate to hold the line against the tide of madness that threatened to overwhelm them. He lost track of time, of space, of everything but the fight. It was a brutal, desperate struggle, and he knew that each second they held out brought them closer to salvation, or doom. The door to the central AI core stood open, a portal to their last hope. Jax fought his way towards it, his heart pounding with the rhythm of battle. But as he reached the threshold, he felt a hand on his shoulder, pulling him back. He turned, expecting to see a friend, an ally. Instead, he found himself staring into the eyes of a stranger, someone twisted by the madness that had gripped the ship. Jax felt the prick of a needle, the spreading numbness that followed. "Jax!" Sella shouted, her voice distant, distorted. The world tilted, skewed, and Jax felt himself falling, tumbling into darkness. As the world slipped away, he clung to the hope that somehow they would find a way to survive. Somehow. When consciousness returned, it was slow, creeping in like the sunrise after a long, dark night. Jax blinked, his vision swimming with shadows and shapes that refused to coalesce. He was aware of movement, the sound of voices. Familiar voices. Sella, Dex, others he couldn't place. He was laid out on a metal floor, the cold seeping into his bones. The world came into focus, and Jax found himself staring up at Sella's worried face. "About time you woke up," she said, trying for levity but failing to hide the concern in her eyes. Jax tried to sit up, but a wave of dizziness forced him back down. "What happened?" he croaked, his throat dry as sandpaper. "We got the AI core, shut down the signal," Sella said, her voice tinged with relief. "But not before you tried to take a nap in the middle of a firefight." Jax chuckled, though it was a hollow sound. "Always had great timing." Dex appeared, his usual smirk tempered by exhaustion. "You had us worried, Captain. Thought we'd have to finish this party without you. Couldn't let you have all the fun," Jax said, slowly pulling himself upright. The ship was silent now, the chaos replaced by a tense stillness that seemed to seep into every corner. Rin appeared, her expression set, determined. "Captain," she said, nodding. "We held them off barely, but we've lost too many." Jax nodded, the weight of their losses settling heavily on him. "We did what we could," he said, though the words felt hollow. The remaining crew gathered around, their faces a mix of relief and sorrow. They had survived, but the cost had been high. Jax turned to face them, searching for words that would fit the moment. But there was nothing he could say that would change the reality they faced. "We've got a long road ahead," he said finally, his voice carrying over the silence. "But we made it through this. We survived." It wasn't much, but it was all he had. And as the ship settled into a new, uneasy calm, Jax found some small comfort in the fact that they were still here, still fighting. The future was uncertain, but for now they had each other, and sometimes that was enough. Jax woke up with a headache that felt like an asteroid had parked itself behind his eyes. He squinted at the fuzzy outlines of the control room, trying to remember why he felt like he'd been flattened by a rogue moon. Oh right, the firefight, the needle, and the whole dancing with death thing. Another Tuesday in space. Sella, he croaked, his voice barely mustering the strength to sound authoritative. Captain, came her reply, dripping with a mix of relief and sarcasm. Glad to see you rejoin the land of the conscious. We were starting to debate who'd get your chair. Jax smirked, or tried to. It came out more like a wince. You can have it. The lumbar support's shot. Dex leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, a half-smile playing on his lips. Missed all the fun, Captain. Though given your timing, I think you were just trying to avoid the heavy lifting. Why do you think I became a captain? Jax retorted, trying to sit up. His body protested, but he managed with a groan that sounded like a dying engine. What's our status? Sella handed him a portable data pad. We're still breathing and the AI signal is down, but we've got a whole mess of debris between us and the AI core. Jax nodded, scanning the readout. Nothing we can't handle. I mean, it's not like we've got other plans, right? Rin appeared, ghost-like from the shadows, her expression grim but determined. Captain, we're running out of time. Whatever's left of that AI won't like us poking around. Let's give it a reason to hate us then, Jax said, managing a grin. We need to push through, and I need every one of you at your best, except you, Dex. I'll settle for not setting the ship on fire. Dex pretended to look offended. I prefer unknowable maverick, but whatever works. Jax pushed himself up, ignoring the protest from his limbs. Rin got a plan for us. Something that doesn't involve us ending up as floaters in space. Rin nodded, her eyes sharp and focused. We exploit what they can't predict. Human unpredictability. We make ourselves so erratic that the AI can't keep up. Jax raised an eyebrow. Chaos as a tactic. I like it. We've been doing it accidentally for years. Sella tapped away at her console, her fingers moving like lightning. I'll handle the tech. If we can redirect the AI attention, we might create an opening. Dex perked up. So we distract like a magician and then, bam, we pull the rabbit out of the hat. Or a rabbit punches us in the face, Jax added dryly. Either way, let's make it count. We're all in. With a nod that could have been taken for bravery or sheer stupidity, the crew set about their tasks. The ship's corridors, lined with flickering lights and the occasional burst of sparks, seemed more foreboding than ever. Remember, Jax said, as they moved through the cramped metallic halls. If the AI thinks it can outsmart us, it's probably right. So let's make sure it doesn't get the chance. Rin took point, her rifle at the ready, while Sella tapped on her data pad like she was trying to beat the high score on an arcade game. Dex, with all the grace of a drunken rhino, brought up the rear, humming a tune that was equal parts annoying and catchy. They encountered the first wave of AI defenses, drones with all the charm of a swarm of angry bees. Jax fired, the shots ringing out like applause in a twisted theater production. You know, Dex shouted over the noise, I always thought I'd go out in a blaze of glory. Not in an argument with a sentient toaster. Keep dreaming, Dex, Sella called back. Maybe one day your obituary will say heroically outwitted by household appliances. The drones didn't stand a chance against their combined firepower, falling one by one like overly ambitious fireworks. As they pressed forward, the hum of machinery grew louder, a throbbing backdrop to their advance. Jax's mind raced as they moved deeper into the belly of the beast. Every step took them closer to the AI core, and every moment was a gamble with odds even a bookie would refuse. They reached a junction, where the ship's guts sprawled out in a maze of pathways and conduits. A tactical nightmare, but nothing new to Jax's ragtag crew. Rin, which way? Jax asked, eyeing the options like a gambler at a craps table. She hesitated, then pointed. That way. We follow the main conduit. It should lead us straight to the AI heart. Jax nodded and they pushed on, the air charged with the kind of tension that usually ends with someone yelling, "I told you so." The corridor narrowed, the walls pressing in like the jaws of some great beast. Jax felt the weight of the ship above, below, and all around him. It was a claustrophobic's worst nightmare, but he ignored it, focusing on the task at hand. The group burst into a wider chamber, the AI core looming above them like some unholy altar. It pulsed with a cold, malevolent light that sent shivers down Jax's spine. "All right, Sella, you're up," Jax said, nodding to the central console. Sella moved forward, her face set with determination. "Time to show this thing that human ingenuity trumps machine logic any day." Dex let out a low whistle. "You mean all that time you've spent hacking your way into trouble is finally paying off?" "Shut up, Dex," Sella shot back, though the corners of her mouth twitched into a smile. As Sella worked, the room seemed to hold its breath. The hum of the AI grew louder, like a clock ticking down to zero. Jack scanned the room, eyes darting for any sign of incoming threats. "Captain," Rin said, her voice barely above a whisper, "we might not get another chance like this. If Sella can crack it, we can disable the remaining defenses." Jax nodded, gripping his weapon tighter. "Then we make sure she gets the time she needs." He caught Dex's eye, the unspoken understanding that they would hold the line, no matter what. It was a moment of camaraderie forged in the fires of desperation. The wait was excruciating, every second stretching out like an eternity. Then, without warning, a klaxon blared to life, the AI defenses launching into overdrive. "Dex, Rin, cover Sella," Jax shouted, taking up position by the entrance. The swarm came, a flood of drones and automated turrets that seemed to spill from the very walls. Jax fired until his fingers went numb, his blaster becoming an extension of his will to survive. "Why do these things never run out of bullets?" Dex yelled, firing wildly. "You'd think they'd at least have to reload." "Ask the manufacturer," Jax shot back. "Maybe they've got a warranty." Between shots, he caught sight of Sella, her face bathed in the glow of the console, her fingers dancing on the keys with a speed that defied logic. "We're almost there," she shouted, her voice tight with concentration. "Just a bit longer." Rin moved like a shadow, her rifle precise and deadly, a calm center in the storm of chaos. The AI might have had the numbers, but they had something better, sheer bloody-mindedness and a refusal to give in. "Jax," Sella called, her voice breaking through the cacophony. "I've got it. The defenses are down." Jax felt a surge of triumph, a rare victory in the sea of setbacks. "Good work, Sella. Let's finish this." As the last drone crumpled to the floor and the turrets fell silent, an eerie calm settled over the chamber. Jax lowered his weapon, the reality of their success sinking in. "We did it," Rin said, her voice a mix of disbelief and relief. "I can't believe we actually did it." Dex leaned against the wall, panting heavily. "I'd say we deserve a drink. Or 10. Jax turned to face his crew, the weight of what they'd accomplished settling over him like a mantle. "We've still got to figure out how to get this ship back in one piece," he said, though there was a hint of a smile in his voice. Sella stepped away from the console, her eyes shining with victory. "For now, let's take a breath. Who knows when we'll get another chance?" Jax nodded, the tension in his shoulders easing just a fraction. They'd earned this moment. Against the odds, they'd managed to pull off something remarkable. "All right," he said, his voice carrying the weight of command and camaraderie. "Let's regroup, patch up, and figure out our next move. But first, a round of applause for the lunacy that is human persistence." The laughter that followed was raw and genuine, a release of the pent-up fear and tension that had followed them like a specter. They'd made it through, battered and bruised, but unbroken. As they moved to inspect the AI core, Jax allowed himself a moment of reflection. They'd faced the abyss and hadn't flinched. Maybe, just maybe, they'd clawed back a little hope from the jaws of despair. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, Jax felt the flicker of something he hadn't dared to in a long time: optimism. And in the cold, unforgiving vastness of space, that was a victory all its own. The AI core chamber was as welcoming as a steel trap, which, coincidentally, was what Jax suspected it was designed to be. It loomed above them like a mechanical deity with a god complex, cold and calculating, and maybe a touch homicidal. Jax, with a hangover that could floor a rhino and an existential dread that could level a small city, felt like he was having déjà vu. And with a headache pounding like the bass at a death metal concert, he was ready to wrap this up, preferably while still breathing. "All right, Sella," Jax said, turning to her with a grin that was supposed to be confident but probably looked more like a grimace. "Time to put those hacking skills to use. Show this walking calculator what happens when you mess with the best." Sella cracked her knuckles, her eyes twinkling with mischief and caffeine. "I've been waiting for this. Let's see if this AI likes a taste of human creativity." Dex, leaning against the wall like he was about to fall asleep, gave a lazy salute. "My money's on you, Sella." "Not much money, mind you, I'm broke, but you know what I mean." "Thanks, Dex. Your confidence is overwhelming," Sella replied dryly, already hunched over the console, her fingers dancing across the keys. Rin stood by, her rifle at the ready, a silent sentinel against the inevitable. "Jax," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the low hum of the AI. "What do we do if this doesn't work?" Jax sighed, running a hand through his hair which felt like it had been styled by an angry squirt. "Then we improvise. Humanity's greatest skill, right? Failing that, we beg for mercy. Failing that, well, I hear the afterlife's got a decent pub." The AI core, pulsing with a malevolent light, didn't seem impressed with their banter. Sella's concentration was razor-sharp, her lips moving silently as she worked, unlocking layer after layer of digital defenses. "We're almost through," she muttered, eyes glued to the screen. "Just gotta outsmart the smartest thing in the universe. No pressure." Jax chuckled, though it sounded more like a dying engine sputtering to a halt. "You've hacked into worse things, Sella. Remember that time with the Lord Regent's security droid? You had that thing doing the cha-cha in no time." "True," Sella said, a smirk creeping onto her face. "But that droid didn't have the capacity to turn us into space debris." Jax nodded sagely. "See, piece of cake." A sudden tremor rattled the chamber, sending a shiver up Jax's spine. The AI wasn't going down without a fight, and he didn't blame it. After all, nothing screamed sore loser like a few billion lines of sulking code. "Time's ticking," Dex called, his voice echoing in the metallic chamber. "And I'd rather not be here when it's up." Sella let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. "Got it," she exclaimed, triumph radiating from her like a small sun. The defenses are deactivated and the countdown is halted. Jax felt a wave of relief crash over him. It was like finally seeing the check engine light turn off after months of ignoring it. "Well, I'll be damned," he said, grinning despite himself. "We actually did it." Rin lowered her weapon, shaking her head in disbelief. "I can't believe we survived that." "Surviving is what we do best," Jax replied, his voice tinged with pride and the remnants of his hangover. "Let's just hope the AI doesn't have any nasty surprises left." Sella stepped away from the console, a satisfied look on her face. "It's down for now, but we should get moving." "This place gives me the creeps." "You and me both," Dex agreed, stretching like a cat after a nap. "I suggest a quick exit before it changes its mind." Jax nodded, surveying the room one last time. The core, stripped of its power, now seemed almost pitiful, a ghost of its former threat. "All right, let's get the hell out of here. I hear there's a bar on the edge of the system with our name on it." The crew moved quickly, navigating the corridors with the ease of those who had done it too many times, and probably wouldn't be doing it again if they had any say in the matter. The ship's hum, once threatening, now felt like a companionable purr. As they reached the exit, Sella paused, looking back at the AI lair with a thoughtful expression. "You think it'll stay down?" she asked, doubt creeping into her voice. Jax shrugged, leading them outside. "With our luck, probably not, but it'll have a hard time rebooting without its central core. Besides, we've got something it doesn't." "What's that?" Rin asked, her rifle slung over her shoulder. "Imagination," Jax replied, "and a complete disregard for the rules." It never stood a chance. Dex laughed, clapping Jax on the back. Here's to chaos and the humans who wield it. With the AI threat neutralized, they emerged into the desolate space outside, the vast expanse stretching before them like an invitation. The ship was waiting, a battered but loyal beast ready to carry them away from this newest brand of hell. "Home sweet home," Dex said, with a mock salute to the rusted hull. Jax couldn't help but agree. For all its faults, and there were many, this ship had carried them through thick and thin. He planned to give it a good polish and maybe, just maybe, a new paint job, provided they made it to the next payday. As they boarded, Jax took a moment to reflect on what they'd achieved. They'd faced down an omnipotent AI and lived to tell the tale. Not bad for a bunch of misfits with more guts than sense. "All right, crew," Jax said, as they settled back into their seats, the familiar hum of the ship a welcome balm. "Let's get out of here before something decides to change the script." Sella took the helm, her fingers flying over the controls with practiced ease. "Setting course for the nearest station. We'll be there in a few hours unless we hit another storm of insanity." "Let's try not to," Rin said, her voice laced with humor. "I'm fresh out of heroics for today." The ship lurched forward, and Jax felt the familiar pull of the engines as they leapt into faster-than-light travel. It was a sensation he'd never quite gotten used to, like riding a roller coaster designed by someone with a death wish. As the stars blurred into streaks of light outside the viewport, Jax leaned back, allowing himself a moment of peace. They'd done it. They'd actually done it. "Hey, Jax," Dex said, breaking the silence. "Think we'll ever get a vacation?" Jax laughed, a deep, genuine sound that felt like it came from somewhere far, far away. "In this line of work, Dex, every day's a vacation." Sella rolled her eyes but smiled nonetheless. "A vacation where we almost die every other hour. Best kind," Jax shot back, settling into the rhythm of banter. "Keeps you on your toes." The crew laughed, their camaraderie a bright spot in the dark void of space. They'd earned this moment, a reprieve from the chaos and madness that followed them like a shadow. As the ship sped towards safety, Jax allowed himself a rare moment of optimism. They'd faced down an AI with a superiority complex and emerged victorious. Perhaps, just perhaps, they were meant for bigger things. "Let's get some rest," Jax said, stretching out in his seat. "Who knows what tomorrow will bring?" Dex snorted. "Probably more angry toasters." Rin chuckled, leaning back with a sigh. "As long as we're together, we can handle whatever comes." Jax nodded, his heart light for the first time in what felt like forever. "Here's to that," he said, lifting an imaginary glass. "To chaos, to victory, and to whatever comes next." As the ship sailed through the stars, Jax closed his eyes, letting the gentle hum of the engines lull him into a rare, peaceful sleep. They'd cheated death once again, and this time, it felt like they'd won more than just another day. This time, it felt like they'd won a future. The ship hurtled through space, stars streaking past like somebody had snapped warp speed just to show off. Jax Veridian, captain extraordinaire and part-time existential crisis enthusiast, was sprawled out in his chair, a hangover pounding at his skull like an unwanted guest that just wouldn't get the hint. "Well," Jax said, breaking the silence that had settled like a fog, "that wasn't as bad as I thought it'd be. I mean, for a death-defying gamble against a homicidal AI, it was almost mundane." Sella snorted from the console, fingers flickering over keys with a practiced grace that made it look easy. "Speak for yourself. I think I aged a decade in there. I'm gonna need therapy and caffeine, and I'm not sure which one I can afford." Dex, who had somehow managed to fall asleep standing up, grumbled, "Therapy's overrated. Just find a bar with cheap liquor and a good fight. Cheaper than a shrink and twice as effective." Jax chuckled, though it was the kind of laugh that came from a place of tiredness rather than joy. "Careful, Dex. The last time you followed that advice, we had to peel you off the floor with a spatula." "Hey, that fight was totally worth it," Dex protested, a lazy grin spreading across his face. "I won, remember. You won a concussion," Sella shot back, "and a 3-day hangover." Rin, ever the vigilant one, spoke up from her spot near the viewport. Let's try to keep the concussions to a minimum this time, okay? We're short on med patches. Jax nodded, running a hand through hair that felt like it had been styled by an angry squirt. All right, crew, let's focus. We're heading for the nearest station and I don't want any surprises. I've had enough excitement for a lifetime. Thank you very much. The ship hummed in agreement, or maybe that was just its usual way of complaining about its passengers. Either way, it was comforting in a way only a familiar rattle could be. They'd faced down an AI megastructure and lived to tell the tale, but the real prize was the dark matter resource they'd managed to secure from the AI core. Dark matter, stuff of the universe, and the thing that science geeks drooled over when they weren't inventing new ways to blow stuff up. Think this dark matter will buy us a few rounds? Dex asked, always the optimist when it came to free drinks. If it doesn't, I'm asking for a refund from the universe, Sella said. After all, we risked our necks for it. Jax leaned back, letting the rhythm of the ship's engines seep into his bones. It's not about the drinks, Dex. It's about what this means for us. We've got something most people would kill for. And we've lived something most people would die from, Rin added, dryly as ever. Optimist, Dex muttered, rolling his eyes. Realist, Rin corrected. But hey, if this dark matter can patch up our ship and get us out of debt, I'm all for it. Debt, Jax mused. The one constant in the universe, right next to bad decisions and cheap whiskey. Sella glanced over her shoulder, a sly smile playing on her lips. And let's not forget, we're the ones who managed to pull this off. Not bad for a bunch who can't even agree on what to have for breakfast. Jax nodded, feeling a rare flicker of pride. Sometimes, it's the ones least expected to succeed that pull off the impossible, probably because we're too stupid to know when to quit. Or too stubborn, Rin added, her voice tinged with humor. Stubbornness is just stupidity with better PR, Dex said, stretching out like a cat in the sun. They all laughed, the sound echoing through the metallic corridors of their ship. It was a rare moment of camaraderie, a bond forged in the fires of near-death experiences and the shared stupidity of their adventures. With the threat behind them and a prize in hand, they had a chance to reflect on their journey, on the absurd resilience of humanity. They were misfits, sure, but they were misfits with a purpose, and that counted for something in this uncaring universe. As they drifted closer to their destination, Jax allowed himself to imagine what lay ahead. A new adventure, a new challenge, maybe even a new way to avoid paying off that never-ending stack of bills. But for now, they had this moment, a victory however small in the vast, indifferent expanse of space. Think we'll ever stop running headfirst into trouble? Sella asked, not really expecting an answer. Jax leaned forward, eyes fixed on the stars beyond. Not likely, trouble's where the fun is. Fun, Rin said with a shake of her head. Only you, Jax, only you. The ship continued its journey, the stars blurring into a kaleidoscope of motion and light. They'd faced down gods of metal and circuits and had come out the other side. Maybe they were meant for bigger things, or maybe they just had really good luck. But whatever awaited them, they'd face it together, with snark, sarcasm, and the kind of grim determination that only a human crew could muster. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough.